Today's episode is brought to you with the support of the Brain Collective in Harrogate. They're a brilliant team who specialise in helping people understand how their brains are functioning and how to optimise mental well-being. They work with everything from focus and sleep to stress and resilience, using gentle, non-invasive techniques like neurofeedback and brain mapping. What I love about it is that it's not about labels or diagnosis, it's about understanding your brain and what it needs to thrive. I've had the pleasure of speaking with people who've worked with them, and the feedback is always the same. They say they're supportive, empowering and eye-opening. So a big thank you to the Brain Collective for sponsoring this episode, and you can find out more about their work at thebraincollective.co.uk. Welcome to Happiness, Health, Relationships podcast. The podcast where small but powerful daily habits are your future self. I'm Angeline, your guide on this journey to cut through myths and misinformation on better health, deeper happiness and more aligned living through the 6 pillars of living medicine, which are stress management, nutrition, sleep, fitness, reducing addictive substances and healthy relationships. Each week, I interview experts in their field exploring real-life strategies, science-backed habits and soulful conversations to help you heal, grow and thrive. One day, one choice, one habit at a time. Because small daily habits are your future self, and your future starts now. I'm excited to welcome our guest today, Paul Boggie. So this is a real story of strength and survival and the human spirit. Paul's a veteran, an author, a motivational speaker, and someone who has overcome incredible odds. From heroin addiction and despair to 21 years of recovery. Paul has dedicated the last 20 years to service, and the story is, it's not just powerful, it's life-changing. So I'm really looking forward to this conversation today, and I'm sure our listeners are too. So thank you for being here, Paul.
Thanks for having me. Looking forward to it.
Absolutely. So let's start at the beginning. If you can take us back, in our previous chat, you talked a little bit about your childhood, really. So if you can just tell us a little bit about what it was like growing up, because that had a serious impact really on what followed. So take us back. What was that like for you growing up?
So I grew up in a council estate in Edinburgh. I'm the second eldest of 4 boys. I had a good upbringing, great parents, strict parents. Enjoyed growing up in that area. It's really friends that you've got are friends that you go to school with, and then you off a night time you're out at playing football at night time till it gets dark, and that's when you have to go in. That was what it was like back in the day, was that whenever it got dark you went in. There was no mobile phones or watches. I had a great time growing up. Obviously I had problems like most people. I never realised really that I was sort of integrated into a gang for a very early age, because these boys were just my friends. But the area that we lived in didn't mean that, 5, 6 years old, when I've just started primary school and I'm going out at night time, there's boys that are, 18 and 20 hanging around the same areas that we're hanging around. And we're all congregated, and it's 50 us, in an area, and we're all getting up to mischief. Some people are more serious than others in their mischief. I was never really bad in comparison to some of the lads that I know. But for as far back as I can remember, drugs were always on the scene. Cannabis, mostly, and alcohol. Those 2 drugs were really common, not just amongst the people that I was hanging around with, but their parents and the community You always got a smell of the unmistakable smelly weed. You didn't really know what it was back then. You just knew the smell. The drug where people act strange and people act funny. That's all we knew back then, is that people that we knew started to act very strange and do things that were completely out of the character. And we just used to find it funny. But there was always that curiosity there where, you know, what they are doing is something I want to do. I want to fit in. If my friends are the same ages as me are thinking the same way, then maybe they'll have a puff of a cigarette. Maybe they'll have a swig of a can of lager. Like you would at New Year. You know, man, he used to always give us the Holstein pills. She used to slide the can down to us when my mum wasn't looking. You know, man, he was always like that and let us drink it. And it's horrible.
That was hardcore stuff, that was, wasn't it? Holstein pills. It was really strong.
And it tasted disgusting. But it was fun to be handed a can of lager for your auntie or from someone out in the street, because it was cool. It felt like you were being cool, you were being grown up. So to do something like that, and like I said, I didn't like the taste, and I didn't particularly like the feeling either. Same the very first time I tried cannabis, I just didn't like the feeling of not being myself. Just a strange feeling that I couldn't explain. But again, I wanted to fit in. So when my friends started smoking cannabis, I wanted to be part of the gang. I wanted to be part of the group. So as much as I didn't like it, and I remember many a time being white and feeling sick and shaking because of cannabis, but continuing to smoke it just because all my friends were smoking it. And then, and life just goes by. I never had a seriously bad upbringing, childhood. Nothing that would explain my later heroin use, which a lot of people, put down to like childhood trauma. Horrific things happened, so that's the reason why it turned to heroin or turned to alcohol or whatever drug it is. But that wasn't the case for me. There was little bits of bullying in life, and I suppose that's normal. Doesn't every kid have bullying at some point in their life? So
I guess a real feeling of wanting to fit in, and a little bit of bullying, like you say, but that then makes you, I think you said before that you felt like you didn't fit in, actually, so this was a way that you could be the same as, everyone else. And like you say, it wasn't an escape at that time. It was just being normal. That was what was going on around you. And in order to fit in, that's what everybody did.
yeah, I didn't fit in within the family, and that was the more difficult thing to take. Where as a young boy, my mum and dad have got 4 boys, 4 unruly, incredibly noisy boys who want to play football all the time, and we are fighting like cat and dog, like physically fighting. We're like screaming and punching and kicking and biting, and I used to get it from both ends. I used to get it from my big brother, and I used to get it from my little brother. And I always remember spending a lot of time with a Walkman. So back in the 80s, there was a Walkman that I had, and with the cassettes, spending a lot of time just listening to music alone. I always remember just like, going into the school, the football park, and just sitting on my own and listening to music. M People and Cranberries were the 2 cassettes that I loved the most. And I just, I felt like I didn't fit in. And my parents and my brothers, there's a thing that was found in a dustbin. Now, it was a joke, obviously, because if you see me and my brothers, we look almost identical-ish. We're definitely all bogies, the four of us. But back when I was a little boy, and I remember saying to my mum and dad, am I adopted? And they laughed, and my brothers were there, and they started laughing, they saying, we found you in a dustbin. And I started crying, grabbed my Walkman, and I ran away. And I remember thinking, that kind of makes sense. That's why I'm different. It's because I'm adopted. And there was that whole attention-seeking thing as well, where you're looking for attention from your mum and dad, but the only kind of attention that I ever seemed to get was negative attention because I was fighting or being too loud, answering back, all these things, and I was always getting told off. So I always felt like I was doing something wrong, but couldn't stop doing the things that I was doing wrong because I was forever getting told off. I now know they loved me, of course, but back then, as a young boy, it's difficult. All the things through life, I realised, stay with you for a whole lifetime. And memories, experiences, how that felt.
Just a quick pause in the episode to let you know about something special. If you're enjoying these conversations, you'll love what's waiting for you over on the brand new Member Vaults page. You'll find free downloads, bonus podcast episodes, and a chance to explore my VIP club. A supportive space packed with exclusive resources. We'll have monthly Zoom sessions or online video sessions, and a private podcast feed just for members. So head over to angelineht.co.uk to dive in. So that's angelineht.co.uk. Everything's in one place, and it's all made with you in mind. Okay, now back to the episode.
When I'm getting older and I got my very first job in a baker's, and I got bullied in the baker's, that was a bit traumatizing because the way that I felt as a 16-year-old young man felt similar to the way that I was felt when I was bullied at school. So you go into your shell a little bit because people are being horrible and nasty towards you. But you just get on with it. There isn't anything else for it. You just have to keep going. So I was in that job for a couple of years, got made redundant, so I found another job. And then in that workplace, I never got bullied. I made a lot of amazing friends and never got bullied once. And when the unfortunate time heroin came onto the scene in Edinburgh, I was a very naive 18-year-old. I was still a wee boy. I'm old enough to go to the pub and drink. I was very immature. And we had been taught about heroin from parents and from school, about needles, belts, spoons, and showing pictures and saying this is heroin, this will kill you. And we had seen firsthand growing up because people died, and we knew the reason that they died was heroin. So that is imprinted in your mind growing up, so right? So that's a definite no-no. Not to even try it like the other things. You're not doing that ever. So when heroin came into the area and all my friends started smoking heroin, I didn't know that was a thing. Chasing the dragon, I didn't know what that was. So my first thought was, it can't be that dangerous because all my friends are doing it.
And you associate heroin with sort of needles and things like that. I think you were saying that before, that that was the scary stuff, you know, the needles and all that. But to smoke it didn't seem like very different to smoking weed. And again, you wanted to fit in, you know. And I was just thinking when you were talking about the bullying again when you were 16 and how that can kind of confirm how you felt when you were bullied previously, you know, not feeling good about yourself, feeling different, not fitting in. All these things kind of accumulate, don't they, to because we know we need each other. So that's why we want to fit in. That's a basic human survival mechanism, really. So I was just thinking at the high draw, if you like, to fit in, was what was really driving your behavior, I guess, and your vulnerability to what was going on around you and being sucked into then, you know, smoking heroin, which didn't sound or seem as dangerous.
Yeah, and the unfortunate thing with taking heroin for the first time was it was very much like the feeling, the physical feeling of the cannabis and the alcohol for the first time. It was very similar, where I would shake, I would go white, I would feel sick like a mom was going to vomit. Very similar feeling. But the unfortunate thing with taking the heroin for the first time and not believing that you can become addicted to it, not believing that it's dangerous, and taking it and realizing that it was a massive escape of reality, that through life we are who we are, right? And we're all in our own heads our whole life. And the memories that we have, which are different for everyone, we carry those memories till the day we die. When we look back and we remember things that happened when we were younger, or something else triggers another memory of something that happened 10 years ago, or when you were in your 20s or your 30s, and that's life. So when I was 18 and I've taken that drug for the first time, I had a lot of hang-ups about myself. You know, I'm ugly, and that had been confirmed through my life from everybody that, you know, I always got picked on for my hair, my bad skin, my horrible teeth, blah, blah, blah. So for me, inside my head, that's confirming that's the way it is, and that's unfortunate, you know, and I didn't feel very good about myself because I believed that to be true. The bullying, the things that happened, all those things through life, when I took heroin, that disappeared. Everything disappeared. And I loved it because I wasn't Paul Boggie. I wasn't this ugly person that didn't really fit in, or that was bullied, or that I wasn't anything. I was just there in that moment.
All those thoughts disappeared.
Everything. It was just like literally like a big puffy smoke, big cloudy smoke just came over my whole life. And I was only in that moment. And I really enjoyed that moment where it seemed bliss just to lie there and not have a care in the world.
That makes sense.
And then I fell in love with that feeling. And unfortunately, because I had these thoughts that it's not dangerous, that you can't become addicted, that it's not going to pose a problem, I just continued to go back and continue every day and every night, smoking it. So did all my friends. Didn't believe that we would become addicted to that drug. We joked about it in the car many times. You'll get addicted. No, you'll get addicted. Shut up. No, you'll get addicted first. And we used to joke and laugh about it. And after months of taking that drug every day and night, and then not being able to get heroin for the first time, was the realization that we're addicted.
Yeah. How did it affect your relationships at the time?
Well, at the time, like with family relationships and things, I found it quite easy, I suppose, early on, because I worked full time for the first 2 years of my heroin addiction. So, and that's all my mum really was bothered about, that I've got a job, that I'm working full time, that I'm paying my way, paying digs, you know. That's what they were most concerned about for all my brothers, was that if we're going to leave school, we go straight into a full-time job, or you're staying on at school. That was the option, and I couldn't wait to get out of school. So I made sure, 16, I had a job. So that was all that really mattered. And then, just go about my life. Well, I didn't tell anyone about my heroin problems until I was 21. So I hid it for 3 years. And I used to just blame it on having the flu. My hay fever's playing up, that's why my eyes are red. I think they thought it was cannabis that I was using. They have no experience of heroin being smoked. The tinfoil, the smell. So when my mum would come into my room after I'd just been chasing the dragon and tried to hide everything and had the window open and thought that the smoke had all been away and the smell was away, my mum would come and say, "What disgusting smell." "Oh, I burnt something by mistake." Just make her an excuse, and she seemed to buy it. She never thought for 1 second that I was sitting taking heroin. Relationships just seemed just normal. But of course, whilst I'm taking heroin, I'm spending a lot of my time now, a lot of time in life, not really caring about anything, not caring about my family relationships, not caring about myself, not caring about anything. I'm so self-indulged in getting my fix every day. And then I'll become a slave to heroin because that's my medicine. I need it every day to function.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I'm going to get sick.
And you got down to 7.5 stone. You were saying, in our previous chat, let's talk about the rock bottom, really. What was that like at the time? You talked about your daughter a little bit as well, when you got down to 7.5 stone that time. Tell us a bit about that, really. What was going on for you then?
So drugs had taken their toll over the years, and when I became a dad and was unable to stop taking heroin for my daughter, and as much as I was trying and I couldn't do it, that whole relationship broke down.
That's the end of part 1 in our 3-part series with Paul Boggie. Join us next week where we continue this really great conversation where Paul talks more about how addiction was really quite a normal, everyday part of life and how subtle addiction was and how it crept in. Can't wait to continue this conversation.